Pastor Matthew Stuckey here, giving you a book review on The Sword and the Scimitar by Raymond Ibrahim. 14 Centuries of War Between Islam and the West. And this is a book where if you're doing a deep dive on Islam, it's going to be near the top of your wish list. It goes through the violence that Islam has put toward the Christians through the centuries, and talks about the Crusades a bit. And Raymond Ibrahim is Egyptian. He's fluent in both Arabic and English. He's got a lot of information on YouTube and videos and website. There's great information there. I'd highly recommend his work. He is a Coptic Christian, which obviously I would have doctrines I disagree with him on, but he is an expert on Islamic history. So for the most part, it doesn't bother me because I certainly have learned a lot through his expertise on Islam and the ideologies of Islam. I would rate this book an 8.5 out of 10. So very solid rating. It was everything I wanted when I got it. I was not disappointed. I don't necessarily believe that most people seeing this would necessarily want to read it or enjoy it. If you're doing a deep dive on Islam, it's a necessity. But it is a tough read. It has a lot of information, which I think is great. I want that information. It also goes through the violence and the torture and sexual perversion. So I found myself skimming a lot of parts because even though I'm really glad that he wrote this and this information is out there, at the same time, it's just kind of vexing to your conscience. And, I think the average person knows that Islam is a very violent religion. This really does a great job citing the sources and showing that it's not just a few extremists. This is part of their ideology. So it's a very important book. I would rate it 8.5 out of 10. I will take off 1.5 for two minor things. And, I'm trying to be realistic. I really enjoyed the book, but I do want to give an honest perspective on it. And so he wants all Christians to be united, and that actually causes me to take off a little bit, 1 point there. And it wouldn't really bother me because I knew that he's a Coptic Christian, but it does affect his view of Islam during the Protestant Reformation. And he brings up this in one paragraph. He says, Suleiman's unprecedented advances into Europe could not have come at a worse time. For the last, worst, and most acrimonious surrendering of Christendom, the ultimate effect of which was to benefit the Muslims, began in 1517. The same year the Ottomans had absorbed the vast domains of the Mamluk Sultanate, a Catholic clergyman named Martin Luther had initiated history's Protestant Reformation. Whatever else can be said of him, Luther unwittingly did much to weaken European unity against invading Islam. And I'm not going to go on with it. There's a lot more information he gives. And of course, he has to talk about this because he's talking about the Islamic violence. But I just have a different perspective on the situation because, he kind of views all of Christendom on the same team. Let's put aside differences. For me, Catholicism is a very different religion than me as an independent fundamental Baptist. And even Martin Luther and the Protestants, I don't consider myself a Protestant. I don't think the Catholic Church was ever the true church. I don't believe that Baptists came from the Protestants. Martin Luther taught very different things than I believe. And so with the battle itself, it would have been a very interesting and confusing time to figure out how to handle things because Islam was certainly taking over, but I do not believe that Christians should all be united. And so I kind of take off his book a little bit because of that, but I certainly understand why he brought it up, and I don't think that we should just throw out all of his work just because there would be one small thing where as independent fundamental Baptists, we might have a different perspective. The other thing that I'm going to take off just a half point on is I wish he had talked about Islam and Jerusalem in more detail. I understand he's just going through the history of it, but at the same time, Islam's ideology with Jerusalem affects the modern day because there's the Palestinian and Israel war, which is a holy war that just keeps going back and forth. And I wish he had brought up kind of the history behind that. And so Muhammad had his night journey to Jerusalem where he rode they were still in Mecca at the time before they had, fled to Medina. At the time, Muslims faced Jerusalem to pray. And Muhammad was, in the middle of the night, a winged donkey-like creature with a peacock tail and a woman's face, flies him to Jerusalem. And whether in the body or out of the body, they debate about that. But over there, he ends up meeting all these great prophets from before, and he leads them in prayer, signaling that he was better than Jesus and better than John the Baptist and better than Abraham and all these people. And also, though, Muslims take away from this event that God promised to Muhammad and to the Muslims that the promised land belonged to them. And so 5 years after the death of Muhammad, Islam violently went into Jerusalem. They took it by force, and the ethnicity became merged with Arabic people that moved in. The language became Arabic, and that is a land that they will not give up. And so it's not just Israel that believes they have a promise, has a promise from God to the promised land. It's also the Muslims as well. So it is a holy war over there that's never going to stop. And I think since it affects our modern day view of all of these wars with Muslims and Christians and with Israel, I really wish he had touched on that a little bit. I'm sure he does in other videos and stuff, but not in this book itself. But even though those are two small things, I would say I wish he had made some changes. It was definitely a good book. Very informative, gives you all the information you need. As I said, it's a bit of a tough read though. It's probably not the book for everyone. I personally enjoyed it. Doing a deep dive on Islam, it's everything I wanted, and it's great to have it in my catalog. So 8.5 out of 10, a very good book. And in case you don't have a chance to read the book or you don't want to, I would recommend checking out Raymond Ibrahim on YouTube and his website. He's got great information. You can learn a lot if you're trying to learn about the problems with Islam. And anyways, thank you and God bless.